A few years ago, Peter Attia, one of my favorite physician influencers, started taking metformin for longevity. I did not agree with that, but I could not tell you why. And usually I love his thinking and his reasoning behind why he does things. This past year, he stopped taking it. I can't wait to tell you why. This story actually begins with a study in 2014. It was looking at longevity and metformin. Metformin, also called glucophage, is something that I've written prescriptions for since my first day as being a physician. It lowers blood sugar by helping sugars cross into the cells and get out of the bloodstream. A very powerful improvement in diabetics, and it does not have the risk of lowering the blood sugars too much. This study, along with several other signals in the literature, said that metformin might have an anti-inflammatory or even an anti-cancer effect. One of the reasons I love Peter Attia is he would go into extreme detail explaining how metformin increases the activation of AMPK and it suppresses the signaling pathway through rapamycin or mTOR. And although I love that information, most of you probably don't care that much. What that means to you is metformin might induce autophagy. Years later, a repeat study looking at a very similar population and the impact on what this drug was doing for healthy people, not those with high blood sugar, pumped the brakes a bit, saying, it might not have done what we thought it was doing. When looking at these two studies, the first study that came out in 2012 showed that while metformin did lower those blood sugars, if you were diabetic, there appeared to be an increased mortality when you took metformin in that setting. However, that did not seem to be the case in the people who were healthy and had normal blood sugars, which is why Peter Attia said he was going to take it. Years later, the secondary study came out looking at, did this in fact increase the mortality rate of the people taking metformin? And again, that's essentially what was found. The problems with the study and the nuances about whether or not we should trust the information is something I'll let Peter Attia and his team of fantastic nerds explain. The punchline was he stopped taking the medication because longevity is really what Dr. Attia is reaching for. In order to explain what made me nervous about taking metformin, I need to explain how it works inside this vacuole or organelle inside your cells. This is my favorite, a mitochondria. The powerhouse of our body. It's where energy is made. Here is my favorite part of the human body, this electron chain transport that's on the outer membrane of that mitochondria. It's where ions are traded and energy is made. And if you block any of these proteins trading ions, you will stop life. Metformin binds right here in complex 1 with a partial blocking of this energy. To make sure you understand how powerful this part of your body is, when you take cyanide, it completely blocks this transport and, of course, causes death within minutes. One way to tell if somebody's taking their metformin is to measure their baseline lactic acid. When your mitochondria has all the oxygen it needs, no lactic acid is made. But as soon as you start to inhibit that one place in the chain, you will make lactic acid because the oxygen cannot meet the demands of the cell. And in this case, it's because of where metformin was binding. Peter Attia routinely checks his lactic acid to prove that he's in zone 2 for his workout. But as he was establishing that, he noticed that the metformin was causing his lactic acid to be increased. When he stopped the drug, his lactic acid went back down to baseline, and his ability to measure zone 2 was much more accurate. My point is that when metformin was on board, the signal telling us that the mitochondria wasn't getting enough oxygen was the elevated lactic acid. As soon as he stopped that, it went back to normal. Lactic acid, you might have learned about this in middle school where they said, yes, when you're running really fast, your muscles will hurt. They probably blamed lactic acid. Now, it turns out that's not why your muscles were hurting, but the concept that you couldn't get enough oxygen to the mitochondria and therefore your lactic acid rose, now that part was true. As Peter Attia lived with a constantly elevated lactic acid because of his metformin, the question he was trying to answer was metformin elongating his life, or was it cutting it shorter? The best part of this story is that Peter Attia used the science to make the first decision and then learned more and made the second decision. I've changed my mind too. Check it out.